Section 1. Fair Housing History. Arizona Fair Housing 101. When new agents join our brokerage, I like to ask them a simple question. What is fair housing? Almost every answer sounds the same. It's the law that says you can't discriminate. Technically, that's correct. But fair housing is much more than a law. It's the foundation of how every real estate professional should treat the public. Every day, Arizona real estate licensees help people make one of the biggest financial and emotional decisions of their lives. Whether someone is purchasing their first home, relocating across the country, investing in rental property, or downsizing after retirement, every consumer deserves the same opportunity to buy, sell, rent, or finance housing without unlawful discrimination. That wasn't always the case. Long before today's real estate professionals entered the business, many Americans faced barriers simply because of who they were. Some families were refused the opportunity to purchase homes. Others were denied financing. Certain neighborhoods were intentionally closed to people because of their race, religion, or national origin. In many communities, housing opportunities were determined by discrimination rather than qualification. As real estate professionals, it is important to understand that fair housing laws were created because these practices were real, not because lawmakers believed they might someday happen. Several years ago, I had a new agent ask me, "Why do we spend so much time learning fair housing? I would never intentionally discriminate against anyone." I explained that most fair housing complaints today are not the result of intentional discrimination. Instead, many begin with an innocent comment, an assumption about a buyer's needs, inconsistent business practices, or advertising that unintentionally discourages a protected group from considering a property. The best real estate professionals don't simply avoid discrimination. They build business practices that ensure every consumer receives the same professional service from the very first conversation until the transaction closes. That philosophy is exactly what fair housing is designed to accomplish. The modern fair housing movement grew out of the civil rights movement during the 1960s. As Americans demanded equal treatment under the law, Congress recognized that equal access to housing was essential to building strong communities and expanding opportunities for future generations. In April 1968, only 1 week after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Congress passed the Fair Housing Act, officially known as Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968. The law prohibited discrimination in many housing-related activities and forever changed how housing transactions would be conducted throughout the United States. Over the following years, Congress expanded the law to provide additional protections. Today, the Fair Housing Act continues to serve as one of the nation's most important civil rights laws and remains a critical part of every Arizona real estate professional's daily responsibilities. Although federal law establishes the framework for fair housing protections, compliance does not stop with Congress. The United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, is responsible for enforcing the Fair Housing Act through its Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity, FHEO. HUD investigates complaints, educates housing providers, works with state and local enforcement agencies, and helps ensure equal housing opportunities across the country. HUD also partners with state agencies through the Fair Housing Assistance Program, FHAP, and with nonprofit organizations through the Fair Housing Initiatives Program, FHIP. Together, these programs help investigate complaints, educate the public, and encourage voluntary compliance with fair housing laws. As you progress through this course, you'll discover that fair housing is much more than memorizing protected classes or avoiding prohibited language. It influences advertising, client communications, property showings, rental practices, disability accommodations, and nearly every interaction a real estate professional has with the public. Understanding where these laws came from provides the foundation for everything we'll discuss throughout the remainder of this course. Arizona Broker Tip: one of the easiest ways to reduce fair housing risk is to develop consistent business practices. Provide every buyer, seller, landlord, tenant, and prospect with the same level of professional service. Ask the same qualifying questions. Present the same available properties that meet their stated criteria, and avoid making assumptions based on personal characteristics. Consistency is one of the strongest defenses against a fair housing complaint. Online discussion question 1. Why do you think Congress believed equal access to housing was an important civil rights issue? Answer: housing affects nearly every aspect of a person's life, including employment opportunities, education, financial stability, and quality of life. Equal access to housing helps ensure that individuals are judged on their qualifications rather than personal characteristics protected by law. Question 2. Why do many fair housing complaints arise even when a licensee has no intention of discriminating? Answer. Many complaints result from inconsistent business practices, assumptions, poor communication, or advertising that unintentionally discourages certain groups. Intent is not always required for a fair housing complaint to be investigated. Question 3. How can establishing consistent office procedures help reduce fair housing risk? Using the same procedures for every consumer helps ensure equal treatment. Standardized practices reduce the likelihood that a licensee will unintentionally treat one individual differently from another.